Hello Internet, Dyce Quirk here. Today I'm going to show you 17 easy to follow steps to help plan your trip to Japan. You might not be able to go at this moment, but we want you to be ready the very moment that you can. Some of the tips that we use in this video might be able to be used for other large trips as well, so stick around. Let's not waste time and let's get to it. Tip number 1. Start saving and make sure you have an up-to-date passport. You should be saving around $3,500 per person, and this is going to cover your flight expenses, your hotel expenses, your train expenses, your food, and a lot more, as long as you're not going too over the top. As far as your passport goes, you want to make sure you get that started early because it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks for it to be processed and shipped back to you. That can be expedited, but it costs a little bit of extra money, and you're going to want to save that for your trip. Not to mention, if you apply when you're at least 16, it takes 10 years for it to expire, so getting started early on this tip is definitely a good idea. Tip number 2. Pick out the group you want to go with you. Now, going to a foreign country can be fun all by itself, but when you bring others into that experience, it's only going to make it better. All of you are going to be experiencing completely brand new things that you never even thought of, and you'll all contribute to this brand new experience. So, make sure you pick out your group and let them know as soon as you start planning so they can be a part of the process as well. Tip number 3. Have everyone in your group make a list of places they want to go and things they want to do. This is not only going to help you with your planning down the line, but it's also going to add a variety of different experiences to your trip that you may not have been able to think of on your own. You may not be able to hit every item on every person's list, but it's definitely going to point out which places you absolutely have to go to. And it helps set the expectation before the trip. Let's be honest, you don't want to have missed expectations when you go to a foreign country for the first time. Tip number 4. Figure out how long you want your trip to be and when you want to go. Now that you know all the items that everybody wants to do, you can try to use that to navigate what season you want to go and how long you think it'll take to hit everybody's major wants for this trip. Make sure you take into account certain events only take place during certain times of the year, and so you might have to knock off different events. Tip number 5. Start looking for a plane ticket right now. Seriously, this could save you so much money on your trip, you wouldn't believe it. An average plane ticket cost from Chicago to Tokyo is around $1,100 to $1,300. But if you start looking early, you can find it as low as $500 to $600. It's really incredible, and it can save you a lot of money so that you can spend that on other parts of your trip. So, get started early, get started right now. Tip number 6. Get with your group and get some good old-fashioned TLC. And what I mean by that are times, locations, and costs. You're going to go through your list of items and you're going to find the time that they're open, the location that they're at, and the cost for each one of them. And that way, since you're doing it with a group, you can save a whole lot of time and everyone gets in on the planning process. This is going to help you so much. So, I recommend you invite them all over, get some pizza, and get to work. Tip number 7. Take all of those locations that you just mapped out with your friends and put them on a Google map. This is going to help you be able to plan out your routes and schedules for the rest of the trip because you'll be able to see what's close to other items and which ones are way out of your way that you might not be able to do. So, make sure you get these plotted out and definitely use it while you're planning the next step. Step number 8. Plan a day-by-day schedule. Now that you have everything plotted out on a Google map and you have all of their opening times, make sure you make the most of your trip in Japan by plotting out each day and having some flex time. You don't want to put too much into one day because then you'll never get everything done. There's going to be places you want to stay at longer and some places you want to leave earlier. Just make sure you leave some flex and make sure you plan out every day as best you can. Step number 9. Make reservations for the most popular locations on your list early. You don't want to miss out on something that you've been planning for months because you didn't make early enough reservations. So, if you're planning on visiting the Miyazaki Museum, Studio Ghibli Museum, or some other thing like that, you want to make sure you get started now on reserving as many of them as you can. Step number 10. Reserve your hotels or Airbnb. I personally recommend using hotels because I personally really like using Toyoko-inn. They have these nice cards, and honestly, they work incredibly well with foreigners. You can apply for them online, and they really help you save a lot of money. You can apply for their Toyoko Club card once you get into Japan, and they'll discount everything that you've already made reservations for. So I totally recommend that. If you're going to use Airbnb, make sure you check with the local laws and just how it works over in Japan. You can find all that information online as well. Link to this is in the description. Step number 11. Rent a local hotspot box or a SIM card for your phone. Some phones do have international, but you definitely want to check with that. From what I've experienced, a lot of them are very expensive, and renting either a hotspot box or renting a SIM card for your phone is a lot cheaper. Personally, I like the hotspot box because it does everything I need it to. Most of your time in Japan, you're not going to be using your phone for calls or anything like that. You're going to be using it for a lot of things that use data, such as your Google Maps or your Google Translate or other things like that. So depending on the size of your group, you might want one or two of those. Step number 12. Make sure you make multiple copies of every single paper you have, whether that's your flight tickets, your reservations, your different items that you rented, paperwork for that, or even your passport. You want to have multiple copies of that in different parts of your luggage. For the rest of the paperwork, have all of that in one place that you easily know where you can get to it. That way, if you get to some place and you don't remember your information, it's easily accessible and you can continue on with your trip without any hassle. Step number 13, see if you need a JR Rail Pass, and if you do, make sure you reserve one. The JR Rail Pass is a great way for foreigners that haven't lived in the country to be able to get on Shinkansen or bullet trains and be able to travel all around the country without the hassle of buying individual train tickets. However, if you're not going from one major city to another, it might be worth your time to just get a Suica card, which will work really well for what you need. The JR Rail Pass is really a great way to save if you're going from like Tokyo to Kyoto to Osaka to Himeji to all these different cities, because every time you use the Shinkansen, it can get really expensive. And so the JR Rail Pass is an excellent way for you to travel across the country and experience a whole lot more for a whole lot less. So make sure you check into that. Step number 14. Exchange your saved money at your local bank for Japanese yen or yen. What I mean by that is you don't want to wait until you get to the airport or until you go to Japan to exchange your money. You want to do that before you go. And the reason why is because the exchange rates are going to be way higher at the airport or in Japan. Sometimes local banks don't even have an exchange rate depending on who you're banking with. So you're going to want to check with them, and you're going to want to let them know when you're leaving, whether that's a month in advance or even a week in advance. And I do recommend that you let them know at least a week in advance and during that last week before you leave. That way, you can still exchange money while you're over there by withdrawing it from ATMs, but there will be a larger charge if you withdraw it from an ATM. So, definitely check that out. Step number 15, make sure you have everything you need packed for the trip at least 1 week ahead of time. And if you don't know what to pack, that's okay, we got you covered. Check in the description for a link to our other video where we talk about what to pack for your trip to Japan. Step number 16, have one final meeting to prep with everyone in your group. This is a great time for you to pass out planners if you made a daily planner for everyone, and it's also a great time to make sure everyone's packed and everybody knows what the flight plans are, making sure everybody knows how they're getting to the airport, when they have to be there, and making sure you all know where to meet. So, definitely make sure you don't forget this step. A lot of people do, and this just makes the entire trip so much less hectic and so much more enjoyable. Step number 17, prepare yourself for a long flight and an amazing experience. I'm hoping that our steps helped prepare yourself for this amazing journey, and I'm hoping that this trip continues to grow your perspective of the world. That being said, there's one more thing. So bonus tip number 18, if you absolutely want to have the best experience for your trip, make sure you check out our other video, our top 10 tips for your trip for Japan, where we'll discuss different tips that weren't mentioned inside of this video, and where we're hoping to set you up for the absolute best trip you possibly can. This video was meant to be made in conjunction with the tips video and with our packing video, so make sure you check out all three. And with that, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We do love putting out content, and with your like or subscription to our channel, it goes a long way in helping us do that. So, if you have any questions about any part of this video or about Japan, please leave a comment below. Here at Dyce Quirk, we are all about helping you experience Japan. And so thank you for watching this video, and Dyce Quirk out.